Well,
Yeah, because the Canaanites didn't dwell over there. Their job was to go over there, get those fine things over there, and bring them back to Solomon. Because everybody looked up to Solomon, man. Go ahead.
that they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river.
They call themselves trying to keep the statutes, commandments that they never kept in their own land. Who was among them? Gad, Reuben, Simeon, Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Manasseh, Naphtali, Reuben, and I mentioned Reuben. Now, going back to what I said about this book, hold the mic to my mouth, brother. This book, the history, James Adair. Now, this guy is supposed to be Scottish, all right? James Adair, History of the North American Indian, or History of the American Indian. He's basically said, right, it's Adair's History of the American Indian, all right? Now, I just want to go to a few. There's a lot in this. I was going into this last night, but there's a lot in this book, but I want to go to some key pages in this book. The first page I want to go to is page 14 in this book. Bear with me for 1 minute. And some of you brothers were blessed to get this book. It's hard to get this book, and if you do get this book, you're gonna have to pay some money for this book. Now, I had this book for years, maybe more than 20 years ago. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, you can get the book online. It's actually online. You could read it online and everything.
Well, that's good thing to know. You know, that's why they want to do away with this internet, man. All right, now this is the last paragraph, and it says on page 14 of History of the American Indians. This is the observation that James Adair made when he traded and lived among the North American Indians, all right? He said, from the most exact observation I could make in the long time I traded among the Indian Americans, I was forced to believe them lineally descended from the Israelites, either while they were a maritime power, and they were a maritime power because we're reading about that in the Apocrypha. All right? Or soon after the general captivity. The latter, however, is the most probable. This descent, it wasn't the latter, it was the former. All right? This descent I shall endeavor to prove from their religious rites, civil and martial customs, their marriages, funeral ceremonies, manners, a language, traditions, and a variety of particulars which will at the same time make the reader thoroughly acquainted with nations of which it may be said to this day very little have been known. Very little have been known because this Edomite, this Esau has dug this. He's an it, man. You know, this Edomite have dug a hole and buried it, man. You know. Now I want to go. You go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
This is the book of Deuteronomy 33 and 20. It says, and of Gad he said, blessed be he that enlargeth Gad. He dwelleth as a lion and teareth the arm with the crown of the head. He provided the first part for himself, because there in a portion of the lawgiver was he seated, and he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord and his judgments with Israel. So what did it say? It said, and he provided the first part for himself. Why? Because that was the priesthood. Why? Because it says this. It says, because there, where? Here in America. It says, in a portion of the lawgiver. Why? Because Gad was the lawgivers over here. We just read about their ceremonial rites and the certain things that they did that were according to the law. It said, because there, in a portion of the lawgiver was he seated. And he came with the heads of the people. Who was that? Ephraim and the other tribes. And he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord and his judgments with Israel. That's why there were so many relics and so many things found of Gad, because they were like the priests when they came over here to this side of the world. They were keeping the ceremonies, the fringes, you know, the Hebrew, the Most High's name. Go ahead. You know, the Most High's name. That's why when you read in this book, it tells you that they were calling on the Most High's name. Now, in this book, it says Yehovah, right? Or Yohewah, something like that. Now, we don't know if when they reprinted the book, they might have changed around the letters a little bit. That could be possible. Or it probably was that Gad, you know, after a while lost certain of the pronunciations, because that happens. If you don't practice a language, after a while you lose certain things. And then they came up with, you know, Jake likes to come up with their own slang. So after a while you come up with that slang, if you don't practice the so-called proper way of saying something, you'll lose it. So that's why the Hebrew might have seemed a little broken up. You know, even among the Taino Indians, they had like a dialect of Hebrew, which was called a Taino language. And they had certain names that they were called the Most High by. You know? So all this information is coming out now. It's coming like a freight train, man. It's coming so hard that even you got these guys that are staunch Muslims now talking about Israel. Why ain't they talking about Islam? Why ain't they pushing that Quran? Because they know within inside of them that whole Muslim stuff for so-called black people is all BS. And the scriptures say that our teachers shall not be pushed into a corner anymore. So this truth is coming out to the forefront. It's coming like a freight train, because the Most High is about to make his appearance. And he said that he would take all these different strongholds that were out there and would cast them down before he came back. So that way he can destroy them with the brightness of his coming. So that's what's happening right now. That's why all this information is coming out. And you brothers can get that book. You can actually read it online. You know, if I get a chance, I'll post it up on different sites so you brothers can get it. You know? And the Lord, because I didn't know it was online.